Our neurology may determine our posture, but our posture also influences our neurology. I remember my first day of high school. I went to the most selective, most academic school in Australia, which meant that I didn't know a single other person there. It was a grey, blustery day, and there we were, 120 out-of-place nerds milling around the quadrangle, generally feeling awkward and intimidated. At least I know I was. Except for those few who weren't. They were standing straighter, smiling brighter, and already striding around like they owned the place. There's always a few in every crowd, right? Even a crowd of nerds. That person who walks into the party and all eyes turn their way. Or the beautiful people at the gym who just make everything look effortless. They stand out. Our brains are wired to notice them. So, what is it that we're actually noticing? Well, we could characterize it in many ways, right? It could be their energy, their confidence, their charisma. And those things might all be true, but they're all intangibles. On a simple physical level, we're noticing two things: their posture and their movement patterns. And that tells us all we need to know. Unconsciously, we've already sized them up and determined our place in the pecking order relative to them. And it's remarkably accurate. Those kids standing the tallest on that first day of school, they were the kings of our grade for the next 6 years. Last week we talked about how posture is neurology made visible. But nothing in the body is ever a one-way conversation. Biology is way too efficient for that. Like so many other systems in the body, it's a feedback loop. So today, let's take a look at the other side of the story. We've all heard the saying, fake it till you make it. Now, generally I'm not a fake it kind of guy. What you see is pretty much what you get. However, there's plenty of evidence that this approach does have some actual grounding in physiology. Changing your posture does change your physiology, and it doesn't seem to matter what causes the change in posture. For example, there was a famous study years ago by Fritz Strack where participants were asked to hold a pencil in their mouth. One group held it horizontally between their teeth without letting their lips touch the pencil, which forces the mouth to engage the zygomaticus major, the primary smiling muscle. It's like a fake smile. The other group held the pencil in between their lips. It was like more of a pouting position. And the researchers reported significant changes in mood, confidence, and physiology between the two groups. Importantly, neither group was asked to think happy or sad thoughts. The effect was produced simply through mechanical muscle activation. See, the brain is always monitoring the body in the same way it constantly monitors the external environment, and it draws conclusions based on that information. As we discussed last week, the single biggest afferent input to the nervous system is from our muscle spindle cells. So when the muscles associated with feeling positive and firing, such as the muscles involved in smiling or in standing upright, the brain concludes, I must be happy or safe. And when the muscles associated with negative feelings like frowning or slumping, the conclusion is, I'm unhappy or unsafe. Early research into this phenomenon reported increased testosterone and decreased cortisol based on power poses. Now, there's been some dispute about those early findings as they've been inconsistently replicated. However, the overall effect of posture on mood and cognition has been established beyond doubt. Here's what the research actually shows. Correcting stooped posture in people with mild to moderate depressive symptoms produced higher arousal and positive affect, lower fatigue, more words spoken, fewer first-person singular pronouns. Slumped sitting makes recalling hopeless or defeated memories easier. Upright posture makes positive memory recall easier. Upright sitting has been shown to improve test performance. Upright sitting in stressful situations maintains self-esteem and reduces negative mood. Upright posture during a stressful task lowers cortisol and increases self-reported sense of control. Slumped posture decreases parasympathetic activity and increases sympathetic activity. And upright posture increases vagal tone and reduces salivary chromogranin A, a stress marker. If you want links to any of these papers, I'll chuck them in the comments below. There's plenty more research out there too, but I'm sure you get the point. In fact, you probably don't even need the research, right? I'm sure you've felt this in your own body. But mood is just the tip of the iceberg. Forward posture has been shown to significantly increase beta and gamma wave activity in the brain at rest, creating a constant low-grade state of anxiety, hyperarousal, and stress. What kind of impact do you think that has on concentration or learning and productivity? Not to mention the long-term effect on the autonomic nervous system. This is one of the many things that we look at when patients first walk into my clinic. We measure a whole range of specific markers associated with autonomic balance and burnout. For years, I only did it with adults. After all, why would children be burned out, right? However, over time, I came across a few cases that led me to test children with some of the same protocol. And the results shocked me. You'd be horrified to discover how many children are walking around in a state of adrenal exhaustion and burnout. It's surprisingly common. Something we primarily just used to associate with adults who'd been through really stressful events like divorce or bankruptcy or loss of a loved one. Our neurology is constantly creating our posture, but our posture is also constantly feeding back into our nervous system, and sometimes with devastating results. Another area this has a major impact is our breathing. Research has shown that 83% of subjects with forward head posture show altered breathing patterns. Their forced vital capacity can be reduced by up to 0.81 litres. That's a whole lot less air entering the lungs with each breath. Sternocleidomastoid and anterior scalenes over-recruit, deep cervical flexors weaken, rib cage mobility drops, head drops forward. All of these alterations reduce cortical oxygenation and therefore impact our cognitive performance. And they also feed back into our autonomic system. So shallow upper chest breathing stimulates the sympathetic fight or flight system, whereas deep diaphragmatic breathing has the opposite effect, stimulates the parasympathetic rest and digest system. So this is yet another driver of constant stress and anxiety. It's also a major contributor to a problem that chiropractors deal with every day in practice. Right? Tight neck, shoulders, upper trap muscles, and loss of the cervical curve. And it's because these accessory breathing muscles were never designed to replace our diaphragm as the primary engine of our respiration. It gets even worse than that, though. In 2004, a prospective, multiply adjusted study of 1,353 people found that hyperkyphosis reliably predicted a 1.4 times all-cause mortality. So that's a well-designed, large study showing a 40% increase in death rates linked directly to slumped thoracic posture. There was also a clear link to atherosclerosis. A follow-up study showed that this relationship held even independently of vertebral osteoporosis. Now, 30 to 40% of older patients, of older adults, I should say, not just patients, but older adults in general, have hyperkyphosis. That's a big deal. How many of your patients are already on that path? The analysis suggested that rather than interpreting this as straight up kyphosis causes atherosclerosis, a more accurate understanding is that kyphosis is a visible biomarker for systemic decline, autonomic, respiratory, vagal, and proprioceptive. We're all seeing these things in our clinic every day. The bottom line is this: posture really matters. And it's not about how you look, it's about how you function. It's a neurological issue, a hormonal issue, a respiratory issue, a cognitive issue, a mood and self-esteem issue, a longevity issue. And it's largely going unaddressed, or at least underaddressed. So what can we do about it? Well, there's two basic approaches, two strategies, active and passive. Passive approaches include external supports like traditional orthotics, arch supports, and various postural supports and braces. Now, with the exception of bracing for scoliosis, I just haven't seen any of these approaches work. Either the brain becomes reliant on the external support and becomes weaker over time, or the nervous system just accommodates and simply tunes the external support out. Either way, it doesn't create a lasting result. So that leaves us with the active approaches. The main ones are exercises, regular chiropractic care, and probably other forms of body work as well, but obviously my bias and my personal experience is in favor of chiropractic. And then there's environmental modification, there's improving ergonomics. All these things can be helpful. But since you're watching a foot-brain connection video, of course we're going to focus on feet. In past episodes, we've covered in detail how feet, and particularly feet standing on better balance orthotics, influence posture. So I'm not going to rehash old ground here. If you're a new subscriber and you like to catch up on the science, check out those earlier episodes for a good grounding. Today, I want to touch on a couple of other points. The first one is that the evidence is clear. As I was digging through the posture research for this episode, There were plenty of papers showing that foot interventions improve posture, balance, proprioception, movement patterns, and reduce falls risk. However, what I was unable to find were papers showing long-term results from these short-term interventions. Most of the papers involve some kind of exercise or training program, something like a 4 to 6 week rehab program, followed by remeasuring various indicators, usually with positive results. However, my question is, what happened after those participants stopped doing the exercises? How were they 6 weeks later or 1 year later? Nobody really seems to be tracking that, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer. Chances are the exercise or rehab program needed to be maintained in order to maintain the benefits. And the problem with patients is they're human beings, right? Just like you and me. Sometimes life gets in the way. The unfortunate truth is, for the majority of patients, over time they stop doing the exercise or they stop getting regularly adjusted. Now, I know that's not true for all of them, right? I have many patients who've seen me regularly for over 2 decades. I'm sure you have them in your practice too. But it feels like I have a practice full of them. But the stats argue otherwise. Over that time, there are countless thousands of other patients who have, for one reason or another, dropped out of chiropractic care. And as a result, they've likely lost some or all of the postural benefits that they gained from that care. That's one of the challenges with active interventions. You have to stay active. This is where better balance orthotics really shine. They sit in this unique intersection between active and passive interventions. On the one hand, they're passive. All you have to do is just chuck them in your shoes and walk happily ever after. So patient compliance is huge. But on the other hand, they're actually active. Unlike a regular orthotic, which is static and quickly tuned out by the brain, better balance orthotics have an inbuilt aspect of instability. It's their springiness that makes the difference. It means that they're actively stimulating the nervous system with every step and every minute on your feet. There's very few other one-off interventions that I can think of that continue to pay dividends for years, especially across all the different areas we've covered today. Things like better posture, better balance, better movement, better breathing and oxygenation, better cognitive performance, better mood and self-worth, reduced anxiety and depression, reduced falls risk, reduced all-cause mortality. If you haven't been paying that much attention to posture in your practice, I get it. There's only so many things we can focus on at once, right? And practice constantly demands so much of us. But the research backs up the benefits. Anything that you can do to improve your patient's posture delivers highly significant short and long-term benefits. And getting better balance orthotics on your patient's feet is potentially the easiest, low-cost, highest return place to start. One more thing before I go. Thank you to everybody who commented protocol on my last couple of videos. It's great to see so many docs are interested in improving their patient's posture. You should have received your clinical reference card, as well as a link to a video of me demonstrating the procedure. Remember, it's not meant to be a complete postural fix for the patient. What it is meant to do is create a fast, noticeable result and open up a conversation about the role of their feet in their posture. Let me know how you go. I'd love to hear about your results, or even better, send me some before and after pictures. And if you meant to comment but didn't quite get a chance, didn't get around to it, this one's the last chance. Just comment protocol below and I'll send you the clinical reference card. All right, thanks. Have a great week.